Hey, what's up? Ed Lover here, and in today's tutorial, we're going to be creating this billboard using vectors, layer styles, and the text tool. So we have quite a bit to get through, so I'm going to come up here to File, hit New, and I'm going to create a new document 1200 by 800, and I'm going to click OK. So now that I have that, I want to apply a layer style to this background to create kind of a sunset setting, and to do that, I have to unlock this layer. So if you started a new document with a color set, it's going to lock that layer for you. And to undo that, all you do is simply Alt and double click on this layer. And now I'm ready to apply my layer style. And those will allow you to apply effects very easily, and you can adjust them with little to no effort. So I'm going to right click on this layer and select blending options. And that brings up my window here. And there's quite a few things to select from, so for now I'm going to come over here to Gradient Overlay. To adjust this, I want to click on where it says Gradient, and that'll bring up my presets window, or I can manually enter them myself. And that's what we're going to do. So to do that, I'm going to double click on this first nodule here, and this will bring up your color picker. Now the nodules on top will adjust your opacity. So if I come out of there real quick and I click on this, now I can adjust the opacity. And, well, you can't really tell because it fades into white anyways. But if I come over here to black and change the opacity, you can now see it's phasing out the black. And you can also see those transparent boxes on your gradient bar. So I'm going to bring that back, and I'm going to come over here and double click on this again. And I'm going to come to the blue here, kind of a darkish blue, and I want to set a color here, kind of mimic the top of the sky tone that you see in quite a few dusk settings. So it kind of goes from a blue to a reddish, then an orange, and then it would fade back into your ground at the horizon there. But we're just gonna kind of mimic the overall colors. So I'm gonna hit OK. That sets that one. Now, there's only 2 points here, and that kind of creates a problem for me because I need to add additional colors to this scale. So to do that, all you have to do is click along the bottom of your gradient, and that'll add a stop to what you have here. So now I have a third option I can play around with. And I can double click on this and bring up a color picker for this. And now, if I change this, it's adjusting that middle portion, and then that fades out into the top and bottom stops. So I'm going to come down here to orange, kind of a darkish setting here, and you can see it naturally creates that color grade from sunset. So it's going to orange, and then reddish, or reddish pink, and then up into the blue. And I'm going to hit OK. But it's kind of too big for what I'm looking for, so I want to add yet another stop right here afterwards, and this is going to be that kind of bright horizon. Now, brighten that up a little bit. I'm going to spread these out just a tad. And you see as I drag this little middle nodule here, it adjusts how smoothly this scales in between this stop and this one. So as I drag it this way, you can create a harsher gradient, or whoops, a smooth. If you accidentally add another stop on your gradient, all you have to do is click on it and drag it off. So come back here, and I can drag this out again. I want to make this one kind of a more reddish. Brighten that up a little bit. Just kind of create a smoother gradient here, falling into the horizon. That looks pretty good. And so the last thing I want to do is I want to brighten up this bottom spot here, just so it's not such a harsh black at the bottom. I'm going to double click on this last stop here, and I'm going to come up to an orangish color, and I'm just going to slightly brighten it up, just so it's not pure black. I'm hit OK. So now that I have this, I can adjust this farther on the actual document window. So I'm going to come over here and OK, and you see when you mouse over your document, suddenly your pointer turns into an arrow with the little crosshairs next to it. And what that does is I can drag this gradient up or down, or left and right, whichever you need, and it will change in the document, but it won't actually move your document window. So I'm going to drag this down a little bit further, and I want to adjust this a little bit more. So come back in here, drag this up a little bit more, maybe come up here to a more of a reddish, kind of drag that out there. Maybe come back down here. A lot of this is just playing around with it till you get something you're really satisfied with. A lot of tweaking. That seems pretty good. I'm gonna hit OK again. Now that I have that, my background is pretty much set up. And what's great is for this is we're gonna be using this background color a lot for our document, just to kind of tie everything in so it seems like they all fit together. I'm gonna hit OK, and now that layer style is applied to that layer. And you see over here, this FX means that there's a style on it, and then you can turn off individual effects if you have more than one. Or you can just turn them all off at once. Additionally, you can turn off layers using that same thing by clicking on the eye, and that'll just hide that layer. So now we're gonna get started here building the billboard. And we're gonna use vectors for that. Now I briefly went over vectors in the last tutorial. So once again, vectors work differently than normal images, because when you scale up a normal image, it won't retain the quality. So if I take the pen tool here and I click these points, you can see as I add the third point that suddenly it's drawing a color in between the first and third point. So it's creating a shape, and I can add as many points as I want, and it'll just keep building them in. Now you can come in here between them and create some interesting things. Let's cross them around. But you can see is if I drag this down and I hit OK and then I transform it back up, it hasn't lost any quality. So that's a great thing vectors can do. I'm going to come over here and delete this, drag this down to my recycling bin. But for this I want to use these shape tools. So right now I have this circle selected. If I click and hold on this, you can see the different tools here. So rectangle tool, rounded rectangle, and I want the rectangle. And real quick, I'm going to reset my colors by hitting D, and I'm just going to kind of draw a medium-sized box here and kind of set it okay. And I want to change the color of this, but I don't have to redraw anything, because next to my shape here there's this little box here that shows me my color. So if I double click on that, it brings up the color picker, and now I can change that box to any color I want. But I want to sample off the sky here, just kind of get a base color. I'm going to drag this marker down, something mid-gray with just a tad of the pink of the sky in it. And I'm going to hit OK. Now if you see this kind of outline on it, you can get rid of that very easily by coming over to your paths, clicking off that, and coming back. Or you can just click on another layer and then back on. And that path just basically shows you the outline of this. So once again, if I click on one of these points, you can see how this box is being formed. And if I take come over here, take the direct select tool, I can click on a corner and edit each individual point after I've already created a shape or drawn it or done whatever, and I can do pretty much almost anything with those points. So I'm going to do that with Control-Alt-Z. Next thing I want to do is I want to add a layer style to this shape. So I'm going to right click on this, blending options, and this time I want to add a stroke. And what stroke will do is just basically add an outline to the outside of anything on that layer. So some different options here. You have the size. I'm going to leave it at 3 for now. And position. The position outside will have it draw on the outside or the inside, or you can have it go along the center. But for this I want to set it to the inside. You have your blending mode, which basically works the same thing as layers, opacity, how much you see it. And then an interesting thing down here is your fill type. And an easy trick to create kind of a metallic edge is set it to pattern, and everyone should have these in their default patterns except some of these. These are my own patterns that I've used. But here's this clouds pattern, and you add that in, and you can see it's on the layer there, but now you can take the scale and scale this up all the way to 1,000. And now it doesn't look like those clouds anymore. If I zoom in to 100%, it looks like a metallic edge is on this layer here. And then I'm gonna come and set this to hard light. Next thing, the next style we want to add is an inner shadow. So once again, we're gonna add this, and this dial here basically shows what angle it's at. So you can you can set this for many layers all at once using global light, or you can turn this off and set it individually. So we're gonna turn that off, and we're gonna set the angle to 30 degrees. So now it looks like we're looking at it kind of from a left angle. We're gonna just bump up the size a little bit. And what the size will do is change how feathered the edge is. So if I bump this up a huge amount, you can see that. But if I drop it down to say 0, now it's a hard edge, and the distance will adjust how far that comes in before it starts feathering. So you can kind of see you can have a lot of freedom with that. But I'm going to set this back to 5. And the choke is works similarly to distance, except say you have this out and you have a huge size. The choke will adjust the difference between the size and the distance until it comes down into a hard edge. Put that back real quick, and I'm gonna hit OK now. So next thing we want to do is make this kind of look like it's has some depth to the side. Just make it kind of look 3D. And newer versions of Photoshop, I'm pretty sure, have a 3D tool, but I'm only using CS3, so we're gonna have to fake it. So I'm gonna duplicate this layer by either pressing Ctrl J or drag it to the new layer icon. And I can remove the layer style from this by dragging the little FX and dragging it to the bin. So that's gone off of there. And I want to move this layer below. So there we go. And then I can bump this over 1 pixel to the left and 1 pixel down. And to do that, you click on the move tool here. That's the V hotkey. And that will allow you to just bump things with the arrow keys on your keyboard. So I can do this multiple times, or just very slightly. And when I'm creating 3D effects, I prefer to create groups of new layers because the drop shadow can sometimes not work very well. So if I turn that off, I come back over to my blending options, and I click on drop shadow. I kind of adjust it here, set the size to 0, kind of have it come out to a size that I want. You can see between this corner and the drop shadow, it doesn't create a smooth line. So a way to get around that is to duplicate layers and just bump them. So I'm going to do that again, each time just bumping it over just a little bit, and I'm going to do that real quick here. So I have 5 of them. There we go. And you can see that's created a really smooth transition. So if I zoom in to that here, it looks much closer to 3D than if I were using just a drop shadow. Zoom back out. Now I want to apply some more effects to those layers, but to do to each of those wouldn't be very effective. So we're going to use another tool here that's kind of great for preserving layers and allowing you to apply new styles on top of it. Click on this bottom layer here, and then click on the top copy and hold Shift and select those all. And what I want to do is I want to combine these into a smart layer. So if I right click here, convert to smart object. And if you've ever used After Effects, it's kind of like creating a composition where the things inside that composition will show up on your main document. So if I double click on this, you can see here all those layers are in here, and I can adjust them if I need to. But what's great about doing that instead of just merging them together is I can scale that afterwards and still retain all the quality because the layers inside of this are still a vector. So now I want to create another blending option on top of this just to darken it down. So we're going to add a color overlay, And I want to key up the sky. I want to take that same color. And I want to darken it down farther past the front of the billboard, just so it looks like the sides here go out into Z space, even though we're just creating it ourselves. Hit OK, and I'm going to hit OK on this. But now I want to make that frame a little bit bigger. So, as I said before, adjusting layer styles is very easy. So all you have to do is either right click on this and go back to blending options, or you can double click on the effects wording here and it'll bring up your document again. So I'm going to come back to that stroke and I'm going to bump this up to 8 pixels. So now the edge is a little bit bigger, looks like there's more of a border. And I'm going to have to adjust my inner shadow to compensate for that. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to bump up the distance just a bit, just so it pops out from underneath again. Maybe adjust the size, so 9 and 10. Now I want to create the other half of the billboard. So and to do that, it's very easy. All we do is we take these 2 layers. If you hold shift, you can select them both. And then if you drag them to the new layer icon, you can create duplicates of those layers. And I'm going to remove the effects from both of those by dragging the icon to the trash bin. And now those layers are ready to be used here. So I'm going to drag them on my layers here below my initial billboard. And I'm going to offset them just a little bit here. There we go. And once again, I'm going to want to apply effects to these, so I'm going to convert them to a smart object. And I'm going to add a color overlay. So I'm going to select this color here, and I'm going to darken it down just enough so that you can kind of tell there's 2 separate sides to this billboard. So real quick, I want to create kind of an edge for that one. So I'm going to come into inner shadow again. I'm going to turn off use global light, and I'm going to angle this here because we want to match the way we're looking at this billboard. It won't look right if I had the shadow up here at the top. It'll kind of conflict with what we've done. So I'm going to angle this down, and I want to create a hard edge. So I'm going to set the size to 0. And I'm going to bump the distance to about the same amount, to 8 pixels. And come over to my color and brighten it up. And come back to my color overlay. It's blending too much in between the 2. So I'm going to darken it down farther. There we go. Now there's a very obvious kind of space between the 2. So you can see the back of the billboard here. I'm going to hit OK. Now I want to create the stand for this billboard, so I'm going to zoom out here a little bit, and I want to make sure I'm in between the front billboard and the back one. So now I'm going to come over here, go to my rectangle again, and I want to draw this just long stand here. It doesn't matter if it's black because I can adjust that then. I'm going to zoom back in, and I need to adjust the color of this. So I'm going to double click on this. I want to create kind of just a white pole, but just dark enough that it's not just standing out too much. I'm going to hit OK. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to add a shadow to this. So it looks like this billboard is casting a shadow onto the pole, just so it doesn't look like a flat object, just kind of sticking out here. So I'm going to come over here to blending options and inner shadow once again. So I'm going to turn off use global light. I want to increase the size and the distance a little bit, just so the shadow is coming down. It looks like it's sitting in between these 2 sides of the billboard. So increase the distance a little more, and I want to drop the opacity, just so it's not too dark. So now the billboard that we have is looking a little flat, and to address that, I'm going to add a gradient overlay to this as well. And the basic gradient overlay is actually kind of nice for creating subtle shifts in color without doing pretty much anything to it. So real quick, I'm going to reverse this just so the lighter is down at the bottom. And then I'm going to set this to soft light and drag the opacity back to about 35. And so you can see very easily it adds some difference in the color here without really doing anything at all. Actually, you know what, I like the white better at the top. There we go. So this is starting to come together. Next we want to add our word to this. So the text tool, you can do quite a few things with this. So you have all your fonts up here, and so if you're not sure of a font that you want to use, you can kind of type something out. Let's say toast. And you're not sure what font you want to use, so you can just kind of cycle through by clicking on your fonts here, and you can hit the down arrow on your keyboard, and it'll just cycle through your fonts until you find something that you like. So I'm going to come back down to Verdana, and it's in all caps, but I didn't set it up that way. There's additional text tools over here on your toolbar. So if you click where it says has the A, kind of your character thing, you can adjust the font size and a bunch of other things. But down here, you can apply things to the text that will change it to that. So if I turn all caps off, now it's lowercase. You can just do the first letter capital, small caps. So if I come in, press capital T. But I want to go back to all caps. And I'm going to take my move tool and kind of position it here in the center, but off to the right a little bit, because I want to have my bread over here later. We're going to style this, but we're going to hold off on that for a moment. So I'm going to close this window again, and I want to create kind of an inset in our billboard here. So I'm going to set my color to white by hitting X on my keyboard. And if your colors aren't reset, you can reset them by hitting D. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to draw a box just kind of slightly smaller than the outside. And we'll adjust this in a moment. I want to drag this down to below our toast layer. Now, normally this layer just sitting on top won't receive any layer styles. So if you want a layer on top of it to receive those layer styles that you've set for a layer below it, you can clip them into each other. So if I come over here and I hold Alt, and you see how my icon changes to those couple little circles. If I click then, that layer is now clipped inside of this, so that layer won't show anything outside of that layer. So if I come over here and I drag this out, you can see it stays inside of this box no matter what. Now if I were to adjust this, then it would show up then as this layer changes in size. I'm going to do that. We're going to set this to soft light, and then darken it down to about a 50% gray, a little bit brighter. So it just kind of adds a different texture to our billboard here. And you can see it shifts with the gradient from light to dark without me having to apply another layer style to it in order to copy what was there. Now we want to create kind of a shape around this, and to do that I'm going to use the rounded rectangle tool. So I'm going to come back over here to my toolbar and hold onto this button and then bring up this, and this is an easy way to create rounded corners. And you can see it has a style set to it already. I don't want that. I'm going to take this style off by coming over here to this drop down and then clicking with the arrow through the box. And then to adjust the size of your corners there's this radius box here. And you can scrub this to the left or right or just type it in manually. But I'm going to come over here and I'm going to draw kind of a pill shape around where it says toast. I'm going to bump that over a little. And I want to create a style of this, but I don't want any of this white. I don't want any of that at all. So I can still have a layer style without having any fill there at all by dragging the fill slider to 0. So now that white coloring won't show up at all. And real quick, I'm going to clip this in And now I'm going to come up to blending options and then stroke. And so once again, that'll receive the gradient that it's sitting on, just to help it make it look like it's in the billboard. I'm going to sample this kind of pink color here. I'm going to drag it down, kind of a reddish, a mid-red color here, kind of just in the middle of the entire color range. I'm going to hit OK. And I want to add a little bit more to this, however, so I'm going to come up to inner shadow, and I'm going to point this also to 30 degrees. And actually, let's make it more like that, around 50-ish. I'm going to set my blend mode to normal. And next, I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to try to color sample this. And it's not giving me the color I want. So I'm going to hit cancel, and I can come back down here to stroke. And this is where your hexadecimal number can come in handy if you're having trouble selecting a color. So I'm going to double click on this, hit Control C, and then I'm going to come back up here, and I'm going to paste that in with Control V, and then hit OK. So now I have that same color here. I'm just going to bump up the opacity. So I'm actually liking it with the slight softness there, so I'm going to bump up the distance a little bit, just so it's not just a thin line going around the entire thing. And I'm going to hit OK. So it's starting to come together a little bit. So I'm going to come up over here to toast, and I'm going to set this up to white. You can change the color very easily up here, this color box. So next, I'm going to add kind of a metallic tone to this. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to add a gradient overlay. And very quickly, I'm going to bring this up. Oh, move this a little bit more. I don't have as much space here with the recording window. I'm going to drag this down a little bit. I'm going to click on the gradient. And once again, I want a 3-point gradient. Next, I want to take this blue color from the sky, just by selecting out, and kind of drag it down so it's dark, but not too dark. And next, I want to do the same thing to the bottom. But I don't want this middle to be so bright. So I'm going to come over here, kind of a select there, in the middle range here. We're going to go with more of the blue. Just drag it up a little bit. And hit OK. So you can create kind of a metallic tone using the colors of the sky in order to keep it together with the overall color scheme of what we're doing here. I'm going to hit OK. But that's a little too much, so I'm going to drag this back on the opacity, just so it brightens it up a little bit more. And then real quick, we're going to kind of add that glow effect. You often see it on metal, usually when there's a bright light hitting it, but just for this, we're going to add it anyways. So outer glow will add, well, an outer glow, as the name would imply. And you can change the size of this, kind of either a real tight glow, or you can adjust the spread so it kind of creates a stronger stroke. But I'm going to bring that back to 0 on the spread. And you can adjust your color here, opacity, blending modes, everything you can do pretty much normally with all the layer styles. So I'm going to set the color of the glow. And I'm going to come over here to this sky blue, and I'm going to brighten it up a little bit more. And I'm going to bring the opacity down just so it's a slight glow around the lettering. I'm going to bring the size down a little bit more to 4 pixels. I'm going to hit OK. Now we're going to do with this what we did with the billboard here. So I'm going to click my move tool, and I want to duplicate this toast. I'm going to come to this bottom one here, and I'm going to drag the effects off of it. So now I can move that around very easily. Something you can do with text layers is you can convert them into shapes. If you want to drag and adjust different points on them. We're not going to be doing much of that, but I'm going to show you how you can do it anyways. So I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to convert to shape. So now you see that the outline popped up, and this is now the same as, say, this box layer or anything else we create. So you can kind of create some cool typography things by just dragging out those points on your vectorized text. But for now I'm going to undo that, and I want to darken this down and hit OK. And then once again I'm going to bump it down and to the left. So you can kind of see it has a slight edge on it. I'm going to do that a couple more times. 3 or 4 should be good. So you can see once again we've created that 3D effect, even though I don't have any actual 3D capabilities. And because we're looking at it from the left here with our viewing angle, so you want to make sure that these sides here are facing at the same angle as, say, the side of this billboard. So it'll look off if I, say, dragged it over this way. It just won't match up with the with what's already there. So once again, I'm going to combine these into a smart object. And now we want to make it look like it's extruding from this billboard a little. So I'm going to come to our combine layer here that we just created. I'm going to hit blending options and drop shadow. And I'm going to turn off global light and set the angle to 90 degrees. So now it kind of looks like these letters are poking out of the billboard here. But it's a little too strong. It looks more like they're floating. So we're going to tone that down on the opacity to just a little bit, 20%. So now it looks like they're sitting there instead of floating on top of it. Now we're going to create that circle with the toast in it. And if you're still pretty new with Photoshop, this might seem a little bit advanced, but I'm going to try to take it step by step to make it as easy as possible. So we're going to come back over here and we're going to select the ellipse tool. And then our color is, we want to highlight this kind of red color here that I'm using for the box here. And I'm going to drag this down a little bit. And next, I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to draw a circle. There we go. And I want to position this just so it kind of sits right next to our toast layer, but not directly under it. Something a little bit about there. And I'm going to want to drag this down so it's beneath both our text layers. And then I'm going to take our text and bump it over just a little bit, just to give it some more breathing room. So now we have this. And with vectors, you can kind of combine them or subtract from them. If you're familiar with Illustrator, this will seem very familiar to you. So I'm going to select this, and you want to make sure you have your path selection tool on. And you click on this, and up here you have your Pathfinder tools from Illustrator. So you can combine, subtract, only what's overlapped, or you can exclude overlapping shapes. And that's what we want to do to create that ring. So I'm going to click on this, and I want to adjust and create a new vector shape using this same shape layer. So to do that, you can hold Control, Alt, and then press T. And what that'll do is it'll create a new vector shape inside of that vector that you already have. And because we selected the intersecting hides, this new shape in here hides the center of the circle. And I drag that down by holding Shift and Alt, and we'll scale it evenly. So I'm going to create that circle here, and I'm going to just drag it in here, and then I'm going to hit OK. So now we've created that ring. But the problem is, now this box shape is poking out through the sides here, and we don't want that. We just want this to go into the circle and then stop. And so to address that, we're going to come down here to our pill shape. If I can find it here. Here it is. And we're going to apply a layer mask to this. What a layer mask will do is basically hide what you set it to so it doesn't show up on the document. It's similar to how we clip this layer inside of this one, except this will allow you to additionally hide things without having to clip it. So I'm going to come in, click on this layer, and I apparently have it locked, so I'm going to unlock that. So I'm going to click down here on this little icon. It says Add Layer Mask. And so you can see it's added this white box, and when it's white, it basically means you can see everything. So when you're working with layer mask, it works with black and white and grayscale. So anything white will show up, and anything completely black will be hidden. And then you can kind of create fades by using grayscale. So if I were to fill this with black, suddenly it would disappear completely. So next I want to kind of hide this edge that's sticking out from the back here. So I'm going to come in here, I'm just going to kind of drag this in around the edge of the circle and just make a selection here. And now that I have this selected and my layer mask is set, I can hit Alt backspace on my keyboard, and that'll fill that mask with black, which hides part of the layer. But you can see where I came in here a little too far is this layer style is sticking to the edge of that. So to make it act kind of like one piece, so if I hide the layer, the mask will be hidden with it. I come over here and I right click and I bring up my blending options, and then I hit layer mask hides effects, and that'll make it act like one continuous piece and gets rid of that mess that was sticking out there. So now we're ready to create our toast, and to do that I'm going to create a box and add 2 circles to it. So come over to my rectangle and I want to select kind of a brownish color. I'm going to take this red from document. Well, actually I can't do that because I have the layer mask selected. If you're trying to select a color from the document and you have a layer mask still selected, you're not going to be able to select that color. So I'm going to come off of this by clicking on another layer real quick, and I'm going to do what I just did again. I'm going to click this red and kind of drag this up to just kind of a grayish brown and hit OK. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to create a box shape there. Okay, and I want to make sure that part of it hides inside of the circle so the top can pop out. Drag this up a little bit. Now once again I can add shapes to this without having to create new shape layers, and that way I can apply a style to that one shape layer and have it do exactly what I need. So I'm going to come over here to my box or vector tools, and I'm going to select the ellipse tool again, and this time we want to combine vectors. So we're going to click on add to shape area, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to hold shift and kind of pull down to the center there, just kind of create that top of the toast. It kind of looks like a butt if you really look at it. And then to copy this, I can take my my path selection tool and I can click on this. And if you want to drag something in the document and create a copy, you can hold Alt. If I click and drag this and then hold shift, it'll drag it in a straight line. So now we've created that toast shape just with a few simple steps. So I want to hide those outlines. I'm going to come over here and click off and back on real quick. And I'm going to hide this circle layer real quick by clicking on the eye, and I'm going to bring up my blending options. And this time we're going to use Inner Glow. Inner Glow can add some highlights to a layer, or you can create some interesting effects with it. So I'm going to click on Center where it says your source, and the edge can kind of create from the outside in, and the center will go from the center out. So you see as I increase the size here, it slowly disappears, but we want to just kind of be inside of the edges there. And this time I want to adjust the choke so it creates a much smaller transition between the edges and the inner glow. So I'm going to drop down the size a little bit more, and then I'm going to come over to my color. Screen is okay, and I'm going to darken it down. Just create that brownish golden color of toast. Go, and that looks pretty close. So we're gonna close that. I'm gonna bring up my circle layer again, and now I want this to kind of pop out of the top here. I'm gonna create a layer mask on top of that circle layer. So I'm gonna click on our circle, and I'm gonna click on add layer masks once again. I'm gonna kind of create a selection that allows these top corners to poke out while hiding what's down here. So I'm going to come over here, and if I control click on my toast. Now I have a selection of all those pieces that were in that shape. But if you have part of this selected still, and you go to control click on it, you're only going to get that one little shape selected. So to fix it, you just click on this once, and now all this should be selected again. And control click, and I have my selection. Now I want to get rid of part of this selection, and I can do that by taking the marquee tool, and if I hold Alt, you'll see a little minus popped up next to the tool, and what that means is if I click and drag a box, it'll deselect what I go over. So if I drag up here, now I have just this top part. So now once again I have this selected, I can take my background color and I can hit control backspace to fill in that selection on the layer mask, and you can see the top of this toast is now sticking out from the circle around it. So now we're gonna, after we have all this, we can create that sunburst effect you see on a lot of sometimes ads or other places, and it's very easy to do. All you do is you come over here to your rectangle tool, and we're going to take kind of a dark brownish grayish orange, and I'm going to draw a long rectangle, and instead of having to manually rotate this around, I can do a step and repeat with this shape. And to do that, you hit Control Alt T on your keyboard, and that'll set it up so that it's going to rotate this or move however and create a second shape within that layer. Over here is you have your basically the center point of where it's going to be rotating from. So you see this little icon here. If I move this A over here, it's going to rotate as if it were sticking out from that. So you can kind of see how it rotates around the center of that. You can kind of create some cool things doing that. But for this, I want to set it at the bottom here, and that'll just automatically point it down here. So these are basically little presets of corners of where it can sit. So now if I come over here to the corner, I can kind of rotate it just enough to create an angle for our sunburst. I'm going to hit enter, and now to step this you hit Control Alt Shift and then T, and you can keep hitting it until you come all the way around back to your start. And don't worry about if it's not really even at your start here, because we're going to rotate this so it doesn't show up. So now I'm going to move this layer so it's below all our text and things, and we're going to clip it inside of our backboard by holding Alt and then clicking here. So now it's inside of that, and it's picking up the gradient. If I zoom out here, I can now rotate this to a position that I want. We're actually going to move this down a little bit more. So there we go. And it's a little bit hard to read the text behind this. So I'm going to set this to soft light, just so it's a little more in the background, and it brings out what we've done more. And I'm going to make this more of a orangey sunlight color, enough that it shows up but not too overpowering. Hit OK. So we're down to the last thing we want to do. We want to add those marquee lights that I had on the original. So we're going to come back over here to our vector shapes. I'm going to click ellipse, and I'm going to hold shift and create a perfect circle, just kind of big enough but not too big. Move that down here to the corner, and I need to move this layer to the top, so I'm going to drag that up. And we want it to be a bright color but not pure white, because we want to create some variation in our little light, so a little bit below pure white. And then we're going to bring up our blending options again, and I'm going to set an outer glow and set that to white, and I'm going to scale it up just a little bit to about 10 pixels, and then we're going to come in and set an inner glow, and I'm going to set this to the center and scale up the size to about 10, and also set this one to white. So now I can Alt and drag this, and holding shift I can create a perfect copy and keep it along that line. So I'm going to drag one here, and then on the other side of the post, one in the center, and one on this side. And then to put them along the top, I can take these layers here, hold shift and select them all, and now I can hold Alt on our document and then drag them up and hold shift, and it'll create copies of all of those. Just sit them along the top there. There we go. And that'll just about do it for this tutorial. It's a lot of steps, but as you can see, you can do quite a few things using just shapes and layer styles to create complicated objects. So thank you for watching.